Good evening and welcome back to ParaGhoul Paranormal Discoveries from the Dark. In case you're new here, this radio show and podcast dives deep into the shadows of Saskatchewan's past to learn what lies within. Sometimes we even go to other locations across Canada to talk dark history, mysteries, and urban legends, or even monsters, if you believe in those. I'm your host, K.D. Kulpa, and I'm a horror author and paranormal researcher here in Regina, Saskatchewan. I love digging into the past to bring life to the ghosts and monsters hiding in the dark. And I especially love going live every week with you to tell you what I've uncovered. Tonight we have a special guest on the show. We will be chatting with Danielle Muething. She's a young adult and middle grade horror author, but she also is a narrator for audiobooks as well. And she's brought some of her own personal paranormal experiences to chat about on the show. So dim your lights, settle in, and let's dive into horror writing, narrating, and ghostly experiences with Danielle. All right. So thanks so much for joining us on ParaGhoul Paranormal. I guess just to let our listeners know kind of who you are and a bit of your background, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Danielle Muething. I am an author as well as an audiobook narrator. In as far as the books go that I write, right now I'm focusing on young adult horror because horror is my favorite genre. As far as recording goes, I'll record anything that anybody sends my way. Pretty much, let's say. But yeah, I do all kinds of different recordings and I've been an audiobook narrator for 5 years, coming up on 6.
Oh,
And
wow.
I just put out my first book last year. So, and I record my own audiobooks for now, for my own books, and maybe in the future I'll find some friends to do them with me. So yeah, that's kind of me in a square, in a nut. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So you said young adult horror. So I'm curious, how did you get into young adult horror?
So I how did I? Well, when I was a kid, and reading came my way, it was through school and it was through the things that they tell you have to read, and I wasn't enjoying any of it, and I thought that I didn't like reading.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, yeah, so then I remember Christopher Pike was my first book that I found that I went, wait a minute, reading can be fun. So it was horror, it was written for my age, and I loved it. And so then all of a sudden I went down the rabbit hole of, I got into Fear Street, and I read a little Goosebumps, but I was a little old for Goosebumps at that point. But Fear Street, Christopher Pike, and uh, I can't think of her name right now, but she wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer and all those books. And then, of course, graduated Stephen King and all that. So when thought, I want to write something, I thought, I want to write the things that I would have liked to read as a kid. Um, to have something out there for, put something else out there for kids that were like me that maybe didn't think they liked reading. And, well, here, try this. So the stuff that I write, I don't have language. I don't have adult situations. There's horror,
Yeah.
obviously, but I try not to get too graphic with it. So it really is more of those intro books for kids to be able to get into the genre, and parents not to worry about them getting too much out of it. So that's what I'm writing right now, and that's why.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, and I would agree with you. Like I even find because I have three sons, so I even find with them, they're all different writers or
Yeah,
different readers. They like very different genres. And my middle in particular hated reading until we realized he loves like fantasy graphic novels, and that
yeah,
is his thing. So yeah, it's or about
and
video
that's
games, of course. He
well,
loves the video game stories too. But
I mean, yeah,
yeah. Really exciting for boys that are 11, you know?
right.
So, yeah. But that's yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, I was the same way. I hated English growing up, which so it's funny to be a writer when I hated English.
Right. Right? So interesting
It is.
how you then get into it. Right.
Yeah, no, that's funny. So I guess when did you decide to start writing? Like, was it always something you wanted to do, or?
Um, so I started out my career in theater. So I've been a theater
Oh,
performer. Um, I 20 something years ago. I started doing theater. Well, I started doing theater when I was really young because my mom was in theater, and so she got me into it. And then, that's just been my career for a long time. And um, when right before COVID happened, so 2019, I got into audiobooks. And I had met a friend doing a show, and she's an audiobook narrator, Jennifer DeLaria, and she helped me get into audiobooks. And it just seemed
oh,
kind of natural for an actor to progress into audiobooks. And then COVID hit, and every job I had went away except for audiobooks.
oh,
Uh,
yeah,
Yeah, so because I was teaching after school classes to kids, and I was singing at nursing homes and theater, of course, everything, all that went
yeah.
away. So everything I was doing went away except for audiobooks. So I focused on that for a while. And when everything opened back up, I didn't really go back to anything except for audiobooks. And I absolutely love doing audiobooks, but I have all these ideas in my head, and I was like, I want to try writing something. And my husband was like, yeah, do it. Just do it. That is his mantra to me. Because I'm always like, I have this idea. And he's like, just give it a try. You'll see. If you like it, great. If you don't, cool. So, yeah. So I did. And my first book is called Sisterhood. And I just had this idea. We were watching something that had to do with sororities, and I'm big into vampires. They're my favorite. So I was like, what would happen if there was a sorority run by vampires? How would that work? So that's my
Oh,
first book, was Sisterhood.
that's
Vampire
very
sorority.
cool.
Yeah. So, and then everything else just kind of, after that, any weird idea I had was like, I could write about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. Well, and I guess, yeah, actor turning into narrator. I guess that would be kind of a natural transition, wouldn't it be? Or wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you find the audiobook experience?
I love doing audiobooks. It's funny because I haven't gone back to theater, and I'm not saying that I'll never go back to theater, but for now I'm like, I don't have to memorize anything. I don't have to learn choreography or blocking. I don't have to worry about forgetting my words. It's like, it's so laid back. I don't have to put makeup on.
Oh, that's true. That's a good
Right.
point.
Like, I sit in my basement most of the time in my pajamas or whatever I wore to bed. And I walk down my steps at my house. I don't have to go anywhere. Like, I love I love doing, and yet I still get to use my acting skills. So,
Yep.
and in the last not the last yeah, the last audiobook I did, I got to sing. So
Oh,
I'm using all the skills. Yeah.
wow.
So yeah, I absolutely love doing audiobooks. And it's really cool to meet, like, I get to meet all these authors, and I get to read things that I probably wouldn't have even known about had
Yeah.
I not been doing this job. So, you know, yeah, it's cool. Cool job.
Oh, sounds interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess because have never actually been involved yet in being part of an audiobook. As you know, I did write a book. I released it in September, Coma, and you were kind enough to do it as part of your little Halloween
That
thing,
was
which
so
was
fun.
awesome, where you read a little clip of it.
Sure.
So I guess how long does it take to record an audiobook? 'Cause I would think it would take a while.
It depends. So the way we kind of determine it is, I'm about 9,000 words an hour, a finished hour.
Oh,
So
okay.
we look at it as word count instead of, because of course a chapter can be who knows how long.
Yep.
So yeah, we say, in general, people say around 9,300 words per hour, but I think I personally am around 9,000 words per hour, per finished hour. But a finished hour can take in the beginning, when I started audiobooks, I think it took me 8 to 10 hours for a finished hour. Now I'm down
Oh,
to about 6 hours, probably about 6 hours per finished hour. And that includes reading the book, prepping the book, recording, editing, uh, getting it proofed, which means making sure that I said the right words,
right,
well, didn't mess anything up. Um, and then getting it prepared to go to be the audiobook.
right.
So, yeah, there's a lot to it when it
Oh, I
comes
believe it.
down to it, which is why when people see how much audiobook narrators charge per finished hour, some people are like, "Ooh, that's a lot of money." But when you think about how much goes into that, it's not just 1 hour;
Yeah.
it's 6 to whatever 10 hours sometimes.
Oh, I
So,
believe it. Well,
yeah, and
especially if you try to do like different voices and all of that.
yeah. And then if it's a fantasy book or something and you get all the names that
Oh,
aren't real
yeah.
words, you get the one that I just did where I sang in Japanese and I sang in Spanish.
Oh
So
my
I had to
goodness.
teach myself those songs, and that
That takes
takes
time.
time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's it just depends on the book. And then some books I've done series. And so when
Yep.
you come back to that series, you already know the voices, you already know the words.
Right.
So that's pretty easy. Then you just fall back into that. So yeah, it's a very interesting job.
Oh, that would be.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I'm
and
just
I
trying to think of how do you keep track of the different voices, the different names.
you you have a lot of files.
No doubt.
I have a whole page, like I keep um files of all the characters, their ages, like anything I have, ages, looks, accents, anything like that. I have that all written out. And then voice files, I have a different voice file for every character.
Oh, okay.
And so then if I have to go back, like, what did they sound like? Then I just can pull up that voice file. And I did not do that very well in the beginning of my career. I learned that
Learn
was
that one.
very important. Especially when
Oh.
you're doing a series and somebody in book 1 shows up again in book 5 and you're like, "Whoa, what they sound like?"
Oh no. Oh
So,
wow. Yeah,
keep
I never
your
even
voice
thought of
file, yeah.
that. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was sure it's very much like writing a book, as you already know. Everyone that I tell, "Oh yeah, I wrote a book back in 2021," and they're like, "Oh, is it out yet?"
Yeah.
Well, no. It takes some time,
Right. Right.
just like
Like,
everything. There's a
right.
lot more to the process than you realize until you're
Yeah.
in it.
Right, right. And then it's like, boy, like, you have the idea and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I can write this book." Sure, yeah. And then not only do you have to write it, but then there's editing
Yeah.
and there's covers and there's, you know, I, and then gosh, you get the audiobooks and that's a whole other thing. And yeah,
Ugh,
there's
it's
so
a lot.
much to it. Yeah, yeah. Whew. Yeah. And see, that's why I'm glad that I did start writing because now I appreciate the authors who I've worked with even more. Because I'm like, I know what it went into to get these books, that, put this book
That's
out
true.
there. And
Yeah.
yeah, so nice to have that perspective as well.
Well, I guess we should talk about paranormal experiences since, that's kind of what got us together because
Right,
we met kind of on what was Ladies of Horror, I think, Facebook group,
right,
right? We
right,
were
right.
talking paranormal experiences, which is always fun. So I'd love to hear what you've got for us today.
Oh my gosh, I'm not even quite sure where to start, but uh, because the house that I live in was my grandmother's house.
Okay.
It was built in the 50s, and she moved. She lived here in the 70s. She moved in the 70s, and then we moved in at the beginning of 2000. So
Okay.
I think it was 2001 we moved in here. But my grandmother and my uncle lived here um, before we moved in. My grandmother passed away a year before we moved in, and then my uncle passed away kind of as we were. I mean, he wasn't still here, but as we were living here. But they were both hoarders.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so it kind of lived in our basement for many years. And we think that us not wanting the stuff here brought some things forward because,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because it was, we wanted it gone and we were having troubles getting it gone. And I think that just kind of stirred up some maybe negative emotions around things
Yeah.
and made things start to happen. I think we've only had one experience that was kind of scary. The rest are just kind of either funny or annoying. And so
Yep.
we have two places in our house that I think are I guess, the most haunted.
Mhm.
One being our basement that I'm hanging out in. Thank you very much. And the other is our hallway upstairs. I have asked whoever's hanging out in our basement that we keep my booth a safe space, so we don't come in here and mess with me. Because when I'm recording horror books and I get really
Oh,
into it, like,
yeah.
please don't scare me. I don't need that.
No doubt.
So far, knock on wood, the booth has been safe and we hope it stays that way. But out in the rest of the basement, there are just times when if you're down here by yourself, you feel that there's somebody with, hanging
Yep.
out with you. And my husband will always think it's the other person. Like you turn to say something to the other person who has now come downstairs and you're like, oh wait, I'm still alone. You know.
Yep.
So we have a lot of that down here, and I guess not a ton happens down here, more than just that feeling of maybe somebody being down here with you. But our hallway, not only do we think that it's most likely haunted, but we have talked about that it's possibly a portal. Um,
Oh.
yeah, because and here's our one big portal story is we had some friends over, and every time they come over, something happens. So maybe something's connected to them. I don't know. But we were sitting at our table, and one of them saw a receipt fall from the ceiling, like just kind of come down from the ceiling. And we were like, so we go and we look at the receipt, and it's from a Starbucks in the airport.
Oh.
None of us had been to a Starbucks in the airport. So not only did we not know where it came from, and even if it was just, I don't know, somehow came out of, I don't know, somewhere, the fact that none of us had been my husband and I don't do Starbucks. We hadn't been to the airport in a very long time, and neither had they. So we were just like, I have no idea where that came from. Like,
Yeah.
so where'd it come from? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So that one was really like, oh. Another one was we have these shelves in our hallway where we have picture frames, and
Okay,
they
yeah.
just sit on the and so you can change them out whenever you want. And the same pictures had been sitting there for years. And one of the biggest ones, we were all sitting on the couch watching the TV so you could see down the hallway. And one of the biggest ones, we all saw it. It just kind of went boop and fell and broke on the floor.
Oh,
And
no.
but we saw it go, like it was leaning like this, and
Yeah.
then we just saw it. So it wasn't like it had been forward
Yeah.
and then it just fell. We all watched it go and we were like, okay. And after a while, you just kind of get used to all the crazy stuff that happens because you're like, I don't know, man, this
Yeah.
crazy house that we live in. But so those are some of the bigger ones. One of the one of the funniest ones. This used to happen a lot, and we'd always say, "Thanks a lot, Grandma." Like we'd always blame her for stuff. I don't know if it's her, but we used to joke that it was always her. But I was reading the Lord of the Rings books, and I had finished the first. We knew we had them. We had all three
Yeah.
of them, and I had finished the first one, and I went to look for the second one. We used to have this bookshelf that had doors on it with
Okay.
glass in the front,
Yeah.
and so I'm looking for the second one and I can't find it. And we pull all the books off the bookshelf, right? And we're like, nope, it's not here. So we put all the books away, and then we go and we buy the second book,
No.
of course, right?
Of course.
so
Yep.
so we come because we have it, but where is it? I don't know. So we come back, and not only is the book back in the bookcase, but it's sitting face out against the glass.
No.
And we were just like, Grandma, that's not funny. We just spent money.
To get it
But we were
again.
like, right, thanks a lot, right? And it was right in the front door. So you walk in the front door and the bookcase was like
Right there.
across
No
against
way.
the
So it
wall.
was
So
even
of course
like
you walk in and you're like, hilarious. Yeah, it's so funny. So a lot of that kind of stuff happens around, just kind of silly stuff. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, obviously, you're like, if you could keep us from having to spend money, that would be nice.
Yeah,
But
no doubt, right?
you know.
Maybe show it to me
Yeah.
before I go and buy the new one.
Like, we still would have laughed. We still would have
Yeah,
been like,
exactly.
oh, that's crazy.
Well, that's funny. Well, at least it seems, yeah, more of a jokester, fun ghost and not a super, super scary ghost.
Like I said, there was one that was very unsettling. So we were sleeping,
Yeah.
and something woke us both up. And I swear, up in the corner was a black shadow and two red eyes. I don't know, looking at us.
Oh,
And I started panicking, and my husband was calming me down. And later we talked about it, and because we both tried to just say that it wasn't, we had just dreamed it or I was
yeah,
dreaming
imagined
it.
it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I have had night terrors before, so that, but he saw it too. So
Yeah, when both
the
of you see
fact,
it, that's a hard one to say night terror.
right, you can't just blow it off at that.
Yeah.
And we still, even when we talk about it, we're like, no, I'm pretty sure. But luckily, that's only happened once. But it was scary. Not gonna
Well,
lie,
yeah, that
that
would
was
be.
very scary to wake up to that. And not only did we see it, but then it went away. Like, it didn't hang out, and we've never seen it again. And but we saw it go. It was there, then we saw it leave, and then we were like, okay,
And that was it.
that was it. So we'd be okay if that never happened again.
Yeah, well, maybe that was just a visiting something that hopefully never comes back.
Right. Just checking in.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I heard about your receipt in the hallway. Just
Yeah.
want to see how you're doing.
Yeah. Hopefully that's all that was.
Yeah, like, just checking in. Oh gosh, did you see me? Okay, I'm just gonna leave now. Yeah, like, okay.
I mean,
Please.
that is terrifying.
If we ever felt like we were in danger, or like it was constantly being scary or trying to push us down steps or stuff, I'd worry about it. But
Yeah.
it really is just kind of like, mostly it's just goofy stuff. And
Yeah.
like, we've had a lot of pets, and they, every once in a while, we feel like they come back just trying to visit, which is nice.
Yeah.
And um but yeah, it's mostly silly or weird, or you know even with breaking a picture frame, we still kind of were like, oh, that was kind of cool that we that
Yeah.
we all saw it fall. um so yeah, every once in a while we talk about, we're like, should we ever get somebody to come in and, like, look at the house? But then we're like, I don't really want to know.
Yeah.
you
That's
know
the hard part. Yeah.
Right. I don't want somebody to come in and justify all this stuff that we've, like, you can you can let me think that maybe I'm just, making it all up. I'm not, but
Yeah.
I
Or
make
like
a
you
good
said,
quote.
maybe it's
Yeah.
just your grandma, and that's fine.
Right.
Just
She
leave it at
comes, she
that.
thinks she thinks it's funny. She was a pretty funny lady, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she showed up to be so
Yeah. Fun times, hey?
party in the haunted house.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I grew up in one, so I can appreciate them
Yeah. Right.
and
It's
find them annoying at the same time sometimes. So
right.
yeah.
Right. And I know there are people that are just like, "Pfft, none of that's true."
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay that you don't believe it until you live it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I'm sure I was the same way before I moved into this house, because
Yeah.
I didn't have experiences growing up. I played with the Ouija board with my friends, and I know we were all pushing it. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's, you know, I won't touch one now. I
Oh,
won't
I know
touch
me
one
either.
this. No way. Not in this house. Uh-uh.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, especially if you have a portal in your hallway, you definitely don't want to touch that.
hell no. I am not bringing that in here.
Yeah, no
So,
doubt. Oh, well, I guess
uh,
before we wrap up, where
sure.
can people find your stuff, like your books and your...
Yeah. So everything's on Amazon. Three of them. I have four books out. So we have, let's see, we have Sisterhood, and that was my first book. That one is actually, this one's wide distribution, so you can find it
Okay.
Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere. Also on Audible, so check that one out. The second one was called Arts and Crafts. This one is about witchcraft and art class, hence the name.
Oh, very
And
cool.
and this is a middle grade. This one is young adult, so this one's a little older. This is middle grade, so but this one is Amazon and Kindle Unlimited and Audible. And then Terror at Camp Silverside came out
Oh, yeah.
after. That's my third one. This one came about because my cousin does a festival every year called the Covington
Oh,
Cryptid Festival, and we were talking about me coming and having a booth there, and I was like, oh, I should have a story, a cryptid story. So this is, and for those who don't know what a cryptid is, it's like Bigfoot is the most famous cryptid,
yeah.
Loch Ness monster. You know, it's those creatures that, do they exist? I don't know. But so mine features Octoman. That's him right there.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah, Octoman is a Cincinnati cryptid, so he's local. And I wanted to give him a little feature because he doesn't get enough love. But so this is my cryptid story, Terror at Camp Silverside, and that's a middle grade horror as well. And then my fourth one is called Don't Open the Box.
Ooh.
And that one, I say it's a little more young adult. My husband says it can still be middle grade, but it's about kids who go to a convention, and this girl is very obsessed with this one movie, and she buys, it's called the Nightmare Box, and she buys the box from the movie, but
Okay.
then finds out that the prop maybe isn't quite a prop, and it
Oh.
turns out to be the real thing, and she opens it, and even though she's told don't open the box, she opens it anyway, and then nightmares ensue. So, yeah, that one came about because we were watching the Hellraiser movies.
Oh,
And I was like, so what about Hellraiser for kids?
yeah. Oh,
Like,
that is good.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome having you.
absolutely. It was really nice talking. Very fun to talk about my haunted experience. I don't get to talk about much. So, yay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I get to hear that a lot on my show, which is
Yeah.
good. Unfortunately, we're out of time, my ghouls. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we'll uncover more secrets, unravel more mysteries, and delve deeper into the shadows. Until then, remember to keep your flashlight handy and digital recorders ready. This is Katie Kulpa, signing off. Until next time, my ghouls.